All right, we are live, Kev. We are live.
Sir, how's it going, Daryl? How's it going, everybody? We hope y'all are having a good night. We hope y'all have had a great day. Welcome back to it's been a while since I said this, but welcome back to another edition of the Derl and Kev NBA show live. Different schedule, I'm aware, but still the same show, still the same people, and still the same vibe. You know how it is, you know who it is, you know what it is. It's myself, Kevin Reyes. It's Daryl Rice over here. We are live talking about the NBA, talking betting, talking basketball in general, talking X's and O's, talking whatever about the game of basketball. And we are back. I don't remember like the last time we went live. It has to have been like a couple of months by now. But we are back for the new season in preparation towards the new season, which begins in like a month and a couple of days. It starts on the 26th of October. So we are back for yet another edition of the Derl and Kev NBA show. Now on Fridays. So kind of, going for a hangout type vibe, if you will. As I said, myself, Kevin Reyes, my boy Daryl Rice over there. Daryl, how's it going, my man?
I can't complain, bro. I can't complain. Kev, it has been a wonderful, 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 wonderful day. Add a couple more wonderfuls to that as well. Absolutely great day today, man. I am happy to be back. I mean, there's a lot of things that I honestly anticipate. And I got to tell you, Kev, this is one of those things, man. Getting down, talking ball with my brother from another mother. You know, I got a brother from another mother, and Sparks. But you're my brother from another mother, if there is such thing as that. But yeah, man, I'm happy to be back. There is a lot going on behind the scenes. I feel like there really isn't enough hours in the day. Once you get really, really busy, Kev, and I know we were just talking about this off screen about how, school is, I don't want to say if it's kicking your ass or not, but there is, this is what happens when you're in school. You don't seem like you have enough hours to complete what you got to complete. And I'm just happy to be back, to be honest with you. I'm happy to be a part of this stream. I'm happy that we were able to talk about sports. I'm specifically happy that it is basketball, and it's just a good thing, man. A good thing that's been going on with the NBA. It seemed like it's been a long time. We finally have what you would call an actual normal season here, if you want to call it that. So I'm just happy to be back, man. What's been new with you, Kev? What are you doing?
Nah, man, nothing much besides school. Just really like focusing on the season. It's felt like a long off season. I'll tell you that much. We went from the finals straight
Mm-hmm.
to the Olympics in like a
Mm-hmm.
span of a couple of days. Then we went into free agency, which was like a week later. And then after that, after like the first 2 days of free agency, everything has been kind of dead. It's been like, talking about Ben Simmons every 3 days, which eventually
Man,
gets boring.
boring, bro.
And just like it's an endless cycle of just nothingness. So I'm just stoked for like training camp to start up, which starts in like next week, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Training camp starts now next week, and then the preseason starts like 2 weeks after that, and then the regular season starts on the 26th. So I'm just overall like really excited. And as you said, man, we're looking to get back into normalcy. This is the
Mm-hmm.
start of the NBA season, like normal per
Mm-hmm.
se, like
Mm-hmm.
starting in October. Regular season ends in April, finals end in June or whatever.
Yeah.
And like it should be a fresh start because I remember a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago by now, but I saw a video of like, remember the Bam block on Jason Tatum in the
Yes.
Eastern Conference Finals in Game One? That was a couple of weeks ago. That was 1 year ago. That was 1 year ago, and it was 2 seasons ago. Like that is crazy. That is, I saw that and I had to I was so perplexed, and I had to sit down, like, analyze it for like a couple of minutes. Like, wait, this was a year ago, but 2 seasons ago. That is so weird.
It is.
But of course, the bubble year, then the whole COVID year, and now we're still in kind of COVID, but like a lot of players are vaccinated, so we'll see if like the positive cases drop and like there's not many postponed games or whatever. But yeah, man, hopefully we just get into normalcy. The NBA season, all sports season, just life, just
Yeah.
our overall pandemic. Like, please, all of it has to end soon. So, like, we hope that we get back into normalcy. Like, this upcoming NBA season looks like the start of that for sure.
Yeah. Now I was going to ask you this too. I know we were talking after the season had ended, and you were not. I don't want to say covering, but you were heavily vested into the Puerto Rican League, right? I don't now. First off, I don't know if what I just said is racist. I don't know if it's called the Puerto Rican League or I don't know the specific terminology for it. So if that came off racist, bro, I'm sorry about that. But that
Don't don't
that
worry about it.
season happens after the NBA ends. Is that how that goes?
Well, yeah, it's supposed to happen in the summer. So, like, it's
Gotcha.
supposed to be like a 3-month type of thing between May and this year it started in like May and now it's stretching out into like October. There's only like 32 games. Teams are
Hmm.
playing like 3 times a week. There's 12 teams. One of them really sucks, so like there's only like 11. But yeah, um it's a funky year for sure also here because and like there's a lot of there's been a couple of COVID cases. There's some lack of
Wow.
information, like just a lot of whole like weird stuff. Like the season ends in 2 weeks, and there's still a couple of games that were postponed because of COVID that they still
Wow.
haven't put a date on. So it's just yeah, it's very weird. Like the Puerto Rican League, and yes, we can call it the Puerto Rican League. It's a basketball league in Puerto Rico. It's a Puerto Rican league, so don't worry about it. But it usually is very funky. It's usually like very bad. But now with COVID, it's just 10 times even worse. So like, yeah, this whole pandemic is just throwing everyone off in a loop for sure. It is very, very funky.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So is it safe to say that their season kind of won't be normal until next year?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably. We're depending on the pandemic to end for sure because we're still like there's still a lot of COVID protocols and there's still a lot of like COVID guidelines for just people in general and like
Hmm.
attendance and that type of stuff.
Hmm.
Like for example, like here, kids 12 years or younger can't attend large events because of COVID. So like that
Hmm.
that takes a whole lot of revenue away from like basketball games where like ideally a family's going with like their kids or whatever. Now the kids
Hmm.
can't go, so like that kind of that's just one example, but like in a way that COVID has affected the season for sure. But
Wow.
it definitely is very funky. It definitely is very funky for
Got
sure.
you. Got you. Well, I hope things do get back to normal. We're almost there to a certain degree, but I hope things go back to normal. But let's get into this ball, man. Yes, this is indeed the Derl and Kevs NBA show. We are going on Fridays. We won't be late. That lateness was on myself traveling back from San Diego today. I was at UCSD with an important investment meeting. And as a matter of fact, I found this funny. So the Denver Broncos, the Nuggets are actually holding their training camp at UCSD. So I was like, why would you go all the way,
Yeah.
to San Diego? But the guys I was talking to said, yeah, the organization paid for the facility. So they're going to be training at the UCSD campus, which was kind of interesting. Um, so, yes, we do have training camp starting. We do have the preseason coming not too shortly after that. And we thought this would be a good time to talk about forecasting, all about forecasting today. We can take a deep dive with teams later, and I would like to do that once we see what's going on. But we wanted to look at, if anything, some top tier teams and some bottom tier teams. And Kev, I am specifically in the best coast now, the best coast being the West Coast. You are in the East, heavily, 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 far, far east, if you want to call it that. So I thought this would be a good time to, if hey, we could take top tier teams, bottom tier teams. I handle the Western Conference, you handle the Eastern Conference. So, looking at all the offseason moves that we'll get into later, which may affect the reason why you have these teams as, top three or bottom three, what are your top three teams in the East? Now, I'll throw a little caveat out there before you get started. If you have some honorable mentions, if you want to call it that, or just some teams you want to go down, I don't want to just leave it to just three. Do as you must, kind sir. What do you have for your top three?
Yeah, I have a couple of honorable mentions that I'm gonna
Okay.
get to at the end because the battle for the third best team in the East
Yeah.
is very, very interesting. But like the top two is it's super easy. It's Brooklyn and it's
Yeah.
Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
It's the defending champs and the team that, if healthy, would have been the champs. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's Milwaukee returning most of their supporting cast from their championship crew. It's still Giannis. It's still Drew. It's still
Mm-hmm.
Chris. It's still Brooke. Dante's gonna be healthy this year. They brought back Bobby Portis. They added some great pieces to the bench. Uh, like they're the champs. They're good. It's simple. And then of course you got Brooklyn with their monster, with their three-headed monster with KD, Harden, and
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie. I mean, if they're healthy, they're the team to beat in the entire NBA. That there's no science to that.
Right.
And
Right.
then you add like the incredible supporting cast they have with Joe Harris, with Blake Griffin, with Claxton, with Aldridge, who just retired, with Paul Millsap, who came in from Denver. Like they're just loaded and deep, and then they're star-studded at the top. So
Mm-hmm.
those two are very easy answers. Now the third team in the East, that's where it gets tricky. I have a third team, and then I have four honorable mentions.
Wow.
But I'll get to the team I ultimately chose,
Mm-hmm.
which is the team I trust the most, and I'm gonna say the Atlanta Hawks
Ah.
because you look at what they did last year. They made the Eastern Conference Finals, and like I don't think that was a one-off thing. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think they're legitimately good, and they're legitimately like here to stay.
Yeah.
With Trey, John Collins, Clint Capella. Like Capella's got a couple of years left on his contract. Collins and Trey just re-signed, so like they're here to stay, and they're both young, and they're both going to keep improving. Trey, obviously, and then they're like deep. They're deep. You know, they were deep in the playoffs with Lou
Mm-hmm.
Will, with Kevin Herter, with Gallo, with the rookie Onyeka Okongwu, with the DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, and now they still have those depth pieces. Like didn't lose anybody of significance, and then they added DeLon Wright. They
Mm-hmm.
recently signed Gorgie Jang this offseason. They had a good draft with Jalen Johnson and Sharif Cooper. So like they're really solid from top to bottom. And all of those guys, like the veterans, I don't think they're gonna fall off, and then the young guys, I think they're gonna improve. And they got Nate, so I trust them the most. In terms
Mm-hmm.
of honorable mentions, I was tempted to say Miami.
I knew
That's the
you
team I
were.
had to
I
for
was
third.
waiting. I was waiting for it,
Yeah,
Kev.
yeah, I was tempted to put them on third, but they just have a lot of they're gonna rely a lot on some pieces that I'm not so confident about. So like I'm not saying those pieces are gonna be bad, but I'm not saying they're gonna be good either. I'm just not sure and I don't know, what to make of it. So like, going from the top to the bottom, like PJ Tucker, is he gonna regress? He's
Mm-hmm.
getting old. Like what does he look like next to Bam? Like is he the ideal fit next to Bam? And then like off the bench, you're depending a lot of young guys. So like Max Struess, he played really good in summer league. Does he have that in him to play for an entire regular season?
Mm-hmm.
The Tyler Hero question, of course. Like, is he gonna come back and step up with a defined role and play good basketball? I don't know that. Is Gabe Vincent gonna be a legitimately good backup point guard because that's the role he's honestly put in right now?
Mm-hmm.
When Victor Oladipo comes back, if whether it's in December and February or March, what does his health look like? Like, is
Right.
he going to be able to contribute? So there's just a lot of like questions I have surrounding the Miami Heat to where I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I just trust the Hawks more. And then
Mm-hmm.
three more audible mentions. I'll say Philly because we don't know what's going to happen with Ben. Like
Right.
I know he's not going to be there for the start of the season, but like it's a matter of do they trade him to where they have some other pieces to where we're going to have to readjust our opinions on them, or is it just going to be the same team from last year with Niang, with Drummond, without Ben Simmons? There's a lot of questions there.
Mm-hmm.
New York, I'm not sure about how much they're going to regress, if there's going to be any regression. And then also they also relying on a lot of pieces that are kind of iffy that I don't trust. So like RJ Barrett, his
Hmm.
progression. Is he going to plateau or is he going to take a big leap? I don't know. Is Kemba going to stay healthy? Is Derrick Rose going to stay healthy? Is Emmanuel quickly going to be consistent, or like our team's going to catch up to him and adjust to him?
Hmm.
What does Evan Fournier as a second option look like? What does Mitchell Robinson healthy look like? Like, can he keep improving? The older guys, can they keep it together? Just a whole lot of different questions. And the final honorable mention I have are the Boston Celtics. What is the fit of their new pieces? Like, how does Josh Richardson, Dennis Schroeder, and Al Horford mix into what they already have?
Hmm.
What kind of improvements do Tatum and Jalen Brown make in terms of like involving their teammates and getting better at playmaking and making plays for others? And then what does their coaching look like? They lost Brad Stevens, which is a big reason why they were
Right.
consistently great. I'm not saying Ime is bad, but I'm pretty sure he's no Brad Stevens, although we'll have to wait and see what his coaching style is, what things he implements with this team.
Hmm.
But in terms of like the one I'm most sure about, I'll say Atlanta. So like my top three would be Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Atlanta, but there's a lot of contenders for that third seed.
Yeah, that's good. That's interesting that you put Miami over Philly, but once you kind of took and kind of broke it down a little more, it does make sense because you really don't know what you're going to get, if anything, with this whole Ben Simmons debacle. And I mean, I don't know, I don't know what the look with Drummond was, bro. I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know if that was just to give help to Embiid. I just don't know how he fits the system, to be honest with you, man. I'm kind of lost with that one. So yeah, I would have to agree with those picks. I think you hit the nail on the head. New York is kind of different also. It just seems like Boston made a swap when they got rid of Fournier and Kemba. Kemba was at OKC for all of 2 seconds, right? And then, he's in New York. I mean, he's from the Bronx. I believe that's where he's born. He was born in New York. And now he's playing with Fournier again. So I guess to make a case, if anything, you know me, we talked about this last year, or last season, Kev, and that is Kevin Fournier or Evan Fournier, man. Something was wrong with him. That back was gone. I don't think he had ever recovered. If this man's back is in peak position, then they've got a bona fide shooter on that squad now, like a nice outside shooter. You don't get that from Randall. You don't have that from Rose. Even RJ Barrett wasn't your 3-point shooter, but you do have a pretty prestigious 3-point shooter in Evan Fournier. I am a fan of his work. I honestly think that he's a good player. I believe that if he's healthy, that could cause some disruption in the East. I mean, they finished what, fourth, I believe. They finished as a fourth seed. So yeah, we'll see if there is a little regression because that's pretty high in the East when you have some other teams that are coming up. So yeah, that is interesting to see how they fit in if there's any regression. So we'll see. What's your bottom three? Well, you know what? I'll give you my top three in the West, and then I'll bounce it back off to you. So here's my top three in the West. I would have to ride that coattail with you. I'm putting the Suns number one, right? They didn't lose anyone. They still have Jay Crowder there, who isn't gone, right? They are your champs, if you will, your Western Conference champs. As far as losing anyone, as far as departure, no. But Saric is out, right? He's not going to be playing. His injury is pretty crucial. But I think you have, because of the experience in the postseason, I think you have a better Bridges this year. I honestly do. I think with the addition of JaVale McGee, I think you do see some discipline on the inside, right? And that helps out Ayton also. So it's not a lot of pressure on Ayton. You have the experience. You have already a champion with JaVale McGee. So I think he provides great experience and veteran presence. So you can't knock them off their mountain just yet, because they were Western Conference Finals or Western Conference champions. So I do have the Suns as still being that top team. The second team, I did go with the Lakers, and it isn't fandom involved. It's just outright all the moves they made. I mean, you talk about moves. I mean, Lakers made moves, man. They pretty much have a completely new roster, if you want to call it that. I use that verbiage they are a year away from being a year away. And I've always lived by this rule, and that is whenever a team gets together for the first time, you always got to go through chemistry. And so we really don't know how we're going to see LeBron and Russell play well together, right? There was, and you've seen little screenshots of AD getting bigger, putting a little more muscle on, to his body to be a little stronger. So you can see the offseason for him was a pretty good one. He also got married. He just recently got married. So that just might ground you. When you sit down and get married, man, and just start thinking about having a family and doing that, I mean, there's a lot of maturity that comes into play here. So him being a champion and knowing how it feels to be a champion and then get knocked off of that title this last year, I think with his development, with A, his body transformation, B, with having a full season, off season there, and then even C, getting married, I think those little things play a role in, what you're going to expect out of him. He is still deadly, man. He just wasn't there all the way with his own injuries last year. So I think he will provide some pressure off of LeBron. I think also Russell will. What I am afraid of is pace, because Russell only knows one speed. And you hear a lot about age. And I just, at this point, if you're still playing at a high level, even in your prime, even if you're 35, 36, 32, whatever, man, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. These guys still went to the playoffs in their old age. So I did have the Lakers number 2, complete rearrangement of their roster. And like I said, they are a year away from being a year away. So if that year away, you're going to see really quickly how these guys mesh on the court. And for what it's worth, you just saw a bunch of veterans out there in Brooklyn get it together, man. And they hadn't played together, right? So besides KD and Harden, but you got nothing but veterans, nothing but superstars on the Nets. And I just think these guys at this level now are smart enough to know how the game works and play the game. And it's just about adapting to each other's play style. The next one, so my first 2, Suns and Lakers, the next one I had to go there again, and that's the Utah Jazz. That is the Utah Jazz. I think they do deserve that 3rd spot. You can talk a lot about Dallas. If they got a new coach, you don't know what you're going to expect out of Jason Kidd. They did lose some people there as well. The problem with the Jazz was they were injured. Donovan was injured, and Mike Conley was injured. Mike Conley, to me, I don't want to say he's overrated. He got the bag going to Utah, but for whatever reason, he just could not be that leader on the team when Donovan was out. And maybe he just didn't know how to really exercise himself into that role. Best season of the year. We talked about the Jazz ad nauseum before the All-Star break, right? Because they were on a tear. But it seems like after the All-Star break, man, something happened in Utah, and they just couldn't get it together. You know how I feel about Snyder Quinn, or Quinn Snyder, Quinn Snyder. Bro, he still looks like an axe murderer to me. I'm telling you, in the offseason, I think this guy plays Dexter. I just think this guy does some suspect shit, man, in the offseason. So I'm not a big fan of his coaching style. We talked about Carlisle just basically making him coach scared. So I'm not a big fan of the head coach. But all in all, this team is still very, very good. Now you add Eric Paschall from the Warriors, and you get Rudy Gay. Right. And I think these are some key additions. I think they can help the team. And this team just seems like they have to stay healthy, because once Donovan goes out, man, it's a completely different team. I've always liked Joe Ingles, but he really can't play unless Donovan is on the court. It seems like he plays better with Donovan on the court. Everyone plays better, for that matter, when Donovan's on the court. So if he stays healthy, if there isn't an injury at an important time, then this team is deadly still. Rudy Gobert, you got another year under his belt. These guys just play well, man. They play well together. There's some conversation going on right now about who's the better player, Donovan Mitchell or Kyrie. And by all means, I don't even know why it's a conversation, but I can see the question. Donovan does make the team different. You talk about a team that is completely different when he's on the court. I can't say the same with Kyrie. And maybe it's just because of the key players around him, but obviously Donovan Mitchell is the best player on the Utah Jazz. So that question is kind of like apples and oranges because, in my opinion, Kyrie is not the best player on the Brooklyn Nets. So that would go to KD. So you could see Kyrie. I mean, there was even discussions, or Stephen A. or somebody had brought up some issue about there could have been a possible interest in a trade to Kyrie, and KD said, hell no. So if you're that dispensable, right, because you got other players, then I don't think there needs to be a conversation about who is the better player. I mean, it can be a conversation, but as far as there just being, it's apples to oranges to me, in my opinion. So those are my top three. I looked at Denver, but you still got Jamal Murray, who's going to be out all year, right? You don't know what you're going to get from, I mean, Joker was this year's MVP, but it was evident that you can't have a big man be your star and be able to bring the team over to the next step, or to the next level. So we'll see, man. We will see what happens with Denver. We'll see what happens with Dallas. But for my top three, it's got to be the Lakers, Suns, and the Jazz. And the reason why I didn't put the Clippers in there is because you got Kawhi out, right? And you did lose some key players there as well. There's no Bobby Shmurda. I believe Bobby Shmurda's gone. Rajon Rondo is gone. And even though these are what you want to call glue guys or set pieces, those set pieces still mattered. So I'm looking at my top three would have to be A, the Suns, B, the Lakers, and C, the Jazz. All right. So those are our top threes for the East and West. Kev, give me your bottom three, or if you've got more teams in the East.
Yeah, before I get to that, I want to say I agree with your West picks. I would pick the same ones, honestly. The questions with the Lakers are very valid in terms of like the spacing, the age, whatever. But like those are questions for the postseason. They just have too much talent to not be that good in the West. Phoenix, I completely agree with everything you said. They had a great free agency. And same thing with Utah. Like they're still really good. Like they deserve their dues, and they added some great pieces that will help them, because what happened with Utah was against the Clippers, besides the injuries and whatever, they just couldn't play small. Rudy Gobert was forced to stay in the paint. No one in the perimeter could stay in front of their man, and they just got dribble penetration all night. Now that they got Pascal and Gay, they can play small with both of them. So, I think those are good ads for the postseason. An honorable mention in the West before I get to my bottom tier teams. This is a team that there's a lot of questions around them. But if everything breaks right, I think Golden State can make a run for like a top 4, top 3 seed. If everything breaks right, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions for sure, especially if, as it recently came out, especially if they're going to be like half their games without Andrew Wiggins because he doesn't want to get the vaccine. But if everything breaks right, I think they can make a run.
Yeah. And the reason why I didn't say that is a good, I was thinking about that team, but also we're probably not going to see Clay back until maybe late December, early December. I did like Tsunami Papi, but I do like Otto Porter also. I do like him. You're bringing AI back there, which he's got familiarity with the team, so he's going to help with depth. Very cerebral player. But my whole issue was, first off, like you said, Wiggins with this whole vaccination thing. I really don't know what's up with James Wiseman either, right? I was high on him, very high on him, but I'm just not sure what I'm going to get from him this year. And then the fact that Clay is not going to be there right off the bat. So to me, that team will matter if they get a very quick start, So I do believe there's probably a good chance that they could be up there, maybe, in the top 4. This team definitely won't be a bottom 8, a play-in tournament type team. I don't think that at all. But I just got to see some key factors and what's going on with those set pieces. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's fair. Getting to the bottom tier, the bottom tier is pretty easy, honestly. For the East, I have no honorable mentions. I just have 3 teams, and that's it. It's Detroit, it's Orlando, and it's Cleveland. three. Well, I mean, I won't say garbage. I won't say dumpster fires. One of them is a dumpster fire. That's Cleveland. And then
Hmm.
the second, the other two are like clearly rebuilding. So like it's kind of okay.
Hmm.
Orlando has been rebuilding
Yeah.
throughout the entire decade,
Yeah.
and so I don't know what to make of that. Since Dwight left, they've been in this constant rebuilding phase. Like
Yeah.
even they even made the playoffs as a rebuilding team. So like I don't understand what's going on there. So maybe that's a little bit of a dumpster fire. They got too many point guards, too many just guards in general. Like Markel when he comes back, Cole Anthony. They got
Hmm.
Jalen Suggs. They got R.J. Hampton. They got Gary Harris. It's kind of iffy
It's
there. And
stacked.
then of
Yeah.
course they just don't have like that star offensive talent. Just development, and they'll be good hopefully in like 3-4 years maybe.
Yeah.
Who's the other team I mentioned? Detroit. They had the number one pick last year for a reason.
Hmm.
It's the Cade year. We'll see how he transitions to the league. We'll see how Jeremy Grant plays alongside him. Killian
Hmm.
Hayes obviously was injured for most of last year, so we'll see. And when he wasn't injured, he wasn't playing that good. So
Hmm.
hopefully he can be consistent this year next to Cade. And then they're going to be relying a lot of the young guys. I read the stat. Was it when they traded Sekou Demboya when they did the Brooklyn trade? Sadiq Bey is the player who's played the most games with Detroit. That's currently on the roster, and he played 72 games last year. So 72 games is like the most veteran player you have on your current team. So like that's they're relying a lot on the young on the youth movement with
Hmm.
Gay, with Killian, with Jeremy, with Stewart, with Sadiq Bey, with Josh Jackson,
Josh
with Frank
Jackson.
Jackson, with
Hmm.
Saban Lee. So that's just clearly a youth movement. And then
Hmm.
Cleveland, they have a team to beat. They've made moves like they're going to be good, but it's just weird. Like the Lowry marketing deal
Yeah.
didn't make sense to me. They have Lowry, they got Kevin Love, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen in the same front court. That doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
Okoro's
Okoro.
okay, but
Hmm.
he's not like a starter on a playoff team. And then they just don't have depth.
Hmm.
So those are the clear three worst teams. As I said, I have no honorable mentions. I could honestly see everyone else in the East besides these three battling for a play-in spot. Like even Toronto or Washington or Charlotte, I could
Hmm.
I could see them battling for a play-in spot. These three teams, I highly doubt it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to agree, man, wholeheartedly. I mean, to make it worse, I remember we were talking last season about rumblings about the team not really liking Colin Sexton, their best player, because he was just a ball hog, right? It was just there was no chemistry there. So I wonder what this his growth that he's taken. Hopefully he's gotten some advising or some counsel and some advisors to get around him and say, hey, you're too good of a player to be having your name, talk like this. Of course, you're probably thinking you have to do it all on your own because this team sucks. But I mean, this is the NBA. These are all pros, man. These guys have played their entire life. So personally, um, I am curious to see this Colin Sexton team next year. You got a whole year now with Colin and Jared Allen, who got the bag, right? So it's really time that this team gets together and start playing some good ball. Um, yeah, I would agree with those. The funny thing is my stock is real high on Charlotte this year. I think they're going to be all right, bro. I really do. I think this team is going to be a lot better than what they played last year. They were right behind, or they were right in front of rather Washington and Indy. They were clustered in that group: Washington Wizards and Indy. And I think Washington has gotten substantially worse, without Russell Westbrook on that team. So I don't think that they have anything to worry about. I believe I didn't agree with it at first. If I was Jordan, I would have gotten rid of Scary Terry before Devontae Graham. But maybe it may be because I'm just a big Devontae Graham fan. I like him a lot better than Scary Terry. But at the same token, we had said this again. When Ball injured his wrist, right? We said we saw how the pace picked up with Ball on the court. And if these guys can mimic what Ball does as far as pass the ball, distribute the ball, get it to PJ Washington, get it to Bridges, then you know what, man? They might not be too bad off. And lo and behold, what did they do? They did just that. They did just that. And so maybe, because Ball is healthy now and all that, either or those guys would be indispensable themselves. So the more I think about it, I'm like, Terry did have some great, he had some great games last year. I believe he had one game where he had the game-winning shot, I believe. It's something I went down, and he had just scored the game winner. And I just think maybe Jordan's got a lot of trust in him more than Devontae Graham. So, yeah, I would agree with those. For the West on my end, man, it's real simple, too. My bottom tier teams, and I guess you can all give them number one. So number one. It's like not 1, 2, or 3. They are all equally bad, but these are all just terrible. One, man, I'm going to go with the Pelicans. I am going to go with the Pelicans because I don't know what the hell was going on with Griffin in the offseason. I have no idea what's going on. This team isn't together. News is already coming out about Zion ghosting Griffin. Didn't show up for a offseason training camp. Was at a college game, and dude is just fat and slobby as hell. I mean, he's totally out of shape is what it looks like. So we don't know what's going on with them. The word also came out that he was more injured than what even the coaches knew. And it's because the parents had reached out and said, they hid the injury. So they hid the severity of the injury. So you just talk about an organization and what you want to call the next coming of LeBron James. The chemistry there is totally off. It is completely off. And it's too soon to be off. I mean, this kid is just now getting in the league, bro. You know what I'm saying? And you already got these types of problems. If I was Zion, I would be suspect about the offseason moves. You already heard JJ Redick come out and say this organization is just a joke. They had given him his word, or their word rather, that they wouldn't trade him. And look what happened. Now JJ is retired. So I think there's a lot of issues with the Pelicans, man. You get rid of Steven Adams and you get Jonas Valanciunas, which was another shocker, if you ask me, because I thought he was just going to fit right in with the Grizzlies. What the hell is going on with that? I had no idea that you would give away your best big man like that. I saw Grayson Allen going. That's fine. He's a set piece. But Jonas, I didn't get that one either. So now you get him, which is going to be a great addition, but you can't play him and Zion together, right? I don't see how that works. I don't see how that works. So you get rid of Ball. You get rid of Bledsoe, which in some people, some cases, some people may think, well, whatever, it's Bledsoe. But the guy's still a great player. I just think it was just a matter of coaching. The Stan Van Gundy experiment did not work out at all. He was gone. And so I just think now you're in another spot to where you are chemistry building and rebuilding this team again. In Zion's, third year now? It's like 2.5 years, if you want to call it that. You do get Graham. You know what I'm saying? So you do get an outside shooter, but you had it in Redick. You had it in Ball in most cases. So why would you ghost those guys? Just to get Devontae Graham, who in Charlotte's eyes is thinking, well, that's our third option at guard. You're going to go Ball, we're going to go Terry Rozier, and then we're going to go Graham. At one point in time, Graham had the highest 3-point percentage, on that team. So I just didn't get that whole move. So I would have to say Pelicans being one of the worst teams, just totally bad. Another one, obviously, is the Houston Rockets. I think this is just going to be a nightmare for Silas in his second year. I think you got a lot of those guys that are not even 20, right? You're giving the ball and you're letting Porter Jr. be the quarterback of that team. So you're giving him the reins to the team. And I just don't think that that's going to work out. You don't know what's going to happen to Wall. I was reading something else that after the All-Star break, in spite of with everything that was going on, Eric Gordon, after the All-Star break, played a total of 25 minutes. 25 minutes after the All-Star break. It's not how you're going to get it done. So you see Silas, you're going to have a bunch of young guys buy into the system, right? And if we're going to talk about age, how old age may not be good for basketball, you can make the same argument about young age, bro. You can make the same argument about young age, and this team is young. And with that said, OKC, well, shit, that's a young team. That is a young team. And so you're giving this team the SGA, who has shown bursts of improvement, but it seemed like he worked better with the veteran. SGA played well with Chris Paul, but just to be the leader of that team, man, I don't know. Lou Dort, hell of a defender. I like Lou Dort, man, but he's not going to give you the offense that you need. So I'm kind of torn between OKC. Who I do like to see is that Alexev Pokusevsky. That guy, he's a shooter. He is a shooter. So if he's worked on his craft in the offseason, maybe you might see some spurts where these guys are playing well together. But I think, in my opinion, you are going to see a lot of on-the-job training, which means they're going to be learning how to play this game during the season, right? You're going to see a lot of, okay, let's put this lineup together. Let's put these guys together to see how they work. Because there's no chemistry there. There's nothing there. And they've got a bunch of young guys on that team. So if we're going to make that argument about old people and Lakers being old and over the hill, you've got to make the same argument about players being too young, too green in this league. And, you got to get a couple of years under your belt before you really know how the system works. So, yeah, they had the highest percentage of young guys playing, and look where it got them. So we could sit there and say it was completely tank season for OKC, but shit, man. So I kind of feel it was also, just being wet behind the ears season. Like these guys they're young. 19, 20-year-old guys, man, playing in the league right now. I mean, go figure. So those would be my three. You could put those in any order, man. Pelicans, OKC, and Houston. I don't think these guys get anywhere close to a play-in.
Yeah, I think Houston and OKC are no doubters because they're clearly rebuilding. They were, lottery. Houston at the number 2 pick. OKC was like 6 or 7. They were like 6 or 7, one of those two. So yeah, they're like clearly bad. OKC, as you said, is going to be on job training. You look at Mark Daigneault was their G League coach. He has no pressure at all to compete. He's not getting his job isn't getting evaluated in that sense. He's going to be judged in the development of his players, and obviously OKC is like 20,000 picks up until 2027.
Yeah,
So
man.
they are a-okay and no rush to compete right now.
Yeah.
Same with Houston. Of course, we have to wait and see what happens with Eric Gordon. I think he gets traded. I thought he would have gotten traded last year if he didn't get hurt. Interesting to see what happens with John Wall. He's not going to play with them this year, so we'll see. It'll be interesting to see who's interested in his $40 million per year salary. With New Orleans, I do agree that their offseason has been very perplexing in terms of like letting go of Lonzo Ball. They did get a good return in the sign and trade, I will say that. But giving a first-round pick to get Devontae Graham, trading away the 10th pick to get Valanciunas, kind of righting the wrongs from last year, and trading Steven Adams and trading Eric Bledsoe, getting rid of that salary. And they got some good pieces. I don't think they make the play-in, but I don't think they're a top 3 worst team in the West. I think they're in between like 12, 11-ish.
Okay.
I would say Memphis is worse because
really?
They're clearly rebuilding, and like they're going to depend on a lot of young pieces to hit. So like besides John Morant and maybe Kyle Anderson and maybe Dylan Brooks, you can't trust anyone on this roster. It's when you look at Sire Williams, they drafted him with a 10 pick. The pick they acquired in the Jonas Valanciunas trade you referenced earlier. They are, that kid has a lot of questions.
Oh, I think your internet is going down a little bit because I got you all choppy.
Give me. Can you
Well,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Good.
Yeah, I can hear you. You were going in and out there.
Let me change it real
Change
quick.
that, but that's
Right,
interesting
in a
that you
second.
that's interesting that you
Listen to
would
me good
say,
now?
yeah, okay, go ahead. No, we're not good. We're not good. Um, you mentioned Memphis, and that's a weird one. That is definitely a weird one because I personally would have thought the Steven Adams edition is actually a good addition. To me, Steven Adams personally, I think he's going to bring a lot of defensive presence to that. So yeah, so go ahead there. I got you, Kev. I got you covered,
Yeah.
man.
Change internets. Can you hear me good now?
Yeah, man. I can hear you and
Yeah.
see. I can hear you
My
and see you good.
my router fixed itself while we were going live. But yeah, so like basically Memphis is just relying on a lot of pieces to hit. Like the Jared Culver piece, for example. They acquired him from Minnesota. Like what does he look like? He's never been consistent. Desmond Bain, he was good in summer league. Can he keep that up in the NBA? So like a lot of question marks that I trust them long term.
Mm-hmm.
Long term, I think they're good, and I like that they're defining a direction in terms of where they want to go and in rebuilding versus like competing for a play-in spot.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of this year alone, I think they're top three, top four worst records
Interesting.
in the league.
So
Yeah.
you say them over the Spurs or over Sacramento?
Over Sacramento, maybe. Over the Spurs, no. And at
Wow.
the end, we're going to talk about hot takes. Spoiler
Mm-hmm.
alert. And I do have a hot take about the Spurs. But
Ah.
to keep it brief, no, I
Okay.
don't think Memphis finishes over the Spurs.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough, man. You know that's a good take on New Orleans. We'll see. I mean, they're not completely decimated. I mean, you still have Zion, and what you know, you just need to decide which version of Zion you're going to get. So yeah, those are our
Yeah, and
top
it,
three.
and it will be a make or break year. You know, they got
Yeah.
Willie Green. I think Willie is going to do a good job coaching there, but it is a make or break year because you mentioned the David Griffin Zion relationship. You know, if they
Mm-hmm.
don't do anything this year, like does Zion just say, you know what, F it, I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a big possibility. So like for their own safety, I do hope they make the plan because if they don't make a push this year,
Yeah.
things might get very tricky.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that the same thing that's happened with Morey, even in Philly, I think you're going to see the same thing happen with David, and that is if anybody wants Zion or if he wants out, he is going to ask for the farm, and I just don't think that people are going to be willing to give him the farm if Zion has just an off year. He can't. The kid is just too special, too talented. You don't get these types of players often. These guys come around every blue moon. You know what I'm saying? So this is going to be a sticky situation. It's one of those things that I would have to say to where if they get off to a rocky start, I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing some mid-season trade talks. You know what I'm saying? I would not be surprised about that. So be on the lookout for that. So that's our top and bottom for the East and West. Pause. For that's our top teams and bottom teams for the East and West. And that's pretty good, man. I would have to agree with everything you said there. So we'll see what happens with that. Now moving on. We've had a lot of moves this offseason, Kev. We have had a ton of moves. Biggest offseason moves. Who do you think benefited? Tell me.
Well, I'll say my favorite moves because if we're talking about the biggest, we're obviously going to talk about the Westbrook
That's
trade.
right.
We're
Yeah.
obviously going to talk about, those type of moves, and
Yeah.
those are really obvious. So I'll say my favorite, like, they're still good moves. I'm not just going to talk about some insignificant role player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my favorite moves, I have five of them. I have
Okay.
5 favorite moves, and some of them we just referenced them a little bit. Uh, 3 moves that Brooklyn made, I really really liked. First off, keeping Bruce Brown and Blake Griffin for cheap
Mm-hmm.
was really good. Both players, I expected them to get paid, especially Bruce Brown, but they decided to wait it out. Blake
Mm-hmm.
signed for the minimum again. Bruce took the qualifying offer, so like he'll bank on himself and he'll bet on himself and hopefully get a payday next year, which is great for him. But then the main thing, those are 2 really good moves. But the main thing for Brooklyn was the Patty Mills signing.
Wow.
That's a really really good signing for them. They last year struggled to find a consistent piece off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Patty Mills, if anything, he's been with the Spurs as a consistent piece off the bench. It doesn't matter the team. It doesn't matter if they're a contender, if they're a pretender, if they're a play-in contender. He's gonna come off the bench. He's gonna come off screens. He's gonna run like crazy. He's gonna shoot threes, and he's gonna score. That's what Patty Mills does.
Mm-hmm.
So and a team like Brooklyn, where I mean, if you got the big 3, what hurts to get another shooter besides them? It doesn't hurt
Mm-hmm.
at all. And then of course you mentioned Kyrie earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Besides like the issues, the extracurricular stuff, Kyrie might get hurt. James Harden might get hurt. They
Yeah.
both might just rest during the year. And when one of them rests, Patty can step right up, be the
Mm-hmm.
starting point guard or the starting 2 guard, and he'll play really good. That's another issue Brooklyn had last year, like the backup PG situation. Sometimes it was Mike James, sometimes it was Chris Chioza. They just didn't have anything consistent in that regard. Patty Mills can be very consistent in that regard. So that would be one. 2 would be we were talking about Detroit. They're gonna suck this year. This doesn't
Mm-hmm.
change anything. But I did like the Kelly Olynyk acquisition in
Yeah.
terms of like the spacing he adds to the youth. You know, like a pick and pop with him and Cade would do wonders. Like just giving the young guys that spacing to work with so that they have more no pun intended, like space on the court to where they can operate. Like Jeremy Grant on ISOs, Cade Cunningham on ISOs and the pick and pop, Killian Hayes, same thing. So I think that's great for their long term development. Obviously, KO is like there to contribute right now, but in terms of like putting them in the right frame to properly develop in the right context, like with the right spacing, with the right pieces, I think he's cool.
Wow.
Next, I referenced this one earlier, like the moves the Bucks made in acquiring Grayson Allen and
Mm-hmm.
also acquiring Rodney Hood and Semi Ojale. If something Milwaukee lacked, if there was anything Milwaukee lacked last year, especially in the playoffs, was the depth of their bench. Like after Dante got hurt, it got to a point in the finals where it was like the only guys you can rely on are the starting 5, Bobby Portis, and then that's it. Because Bryn Forrest would come in, he would make a couple of threes, but then he would get destroyed on defense because he's short, he's not a good defender.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Teague, same thing. He came in, made a couple of good plays on offense, would get destroyed on defense. And then they just didn't have anyone else reliable off the bench to contribute in that way after Dante went out. So these pieces in particular like are 3 really good players, one, and then 2, like they're versatile. They're all going to come off the bench. They can all shoot, especially Grayson and Rodney. Semi's okay in shooting, but then they're also pretty good defenders.
Mm-hmm.
They're all 3 of them can guard 2 to 3 positions. They can't. They're not gonna be played off the court. Is what I'm trying to say. And like if you're a championship contender, if you're the defending champs at that, in Milwaukee, you could use that, and that's something they lacked last year. They won in spite of that, which kudos to them.
Mm-hmm.
But getting extra depth doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and you can make an argument that they're at the same level, if not better, a team that they were last year with the acquisitions they made. So that was pretty good. And then 2 other underrated. Well, this one isn't underrated. Miami keeping Duncan Robinson. Duncan is the key to what they did in terms
Yeah.
of like being one of the top 5 shooters in the league. So that's just pretty simple. Like he just unlocks a lot of things for everybody around him. So like 5 years, 90 million, well deserved for him, and a
Mm-hmm.
great job for Miami and giving him that money. And then the final one was TJ McConnell staying in Indiana, especially for cheap.
Wow. Wow.
Um, it was 4 years, 34 million. And I just like it because one, TJ is pretty good at this whole basketball game. He's a really good six man. He was a really good six man for Indiana last year. And we spoke about this when Rick Carlisle got first hired by Indy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that Rick Carlisle has done wonders throughout his coaching career, especially in Dallas, with small backup point guards, ironically. With JJ Barea, with Raymond Felton, with Devin Harris.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a lot with some backup point guards. I mean, recently with Trey Burke. So I don't know what it is, but I know there's a trend there, and it's not a coincidence. So if there's a trend there and it continues here in Indy, I think TJ McConnell can be really, really, really good. He was already really, really good last year with his efficiency, with his offense, with his IQ, with his defense, just him being a hounding defender. And now with Indiana obviously looking to compete with their healthy roster, and with Rick Carlisle, who's again really good with small point guards throughout his career, I think that'll do wonders for him. And they got him for cheap. 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
34 million for like one of the five best six men in the league. That's really good value for that.
Mm-hmm.
So those aren't the five best moves. They're not the biggest moves, but to kind of keep away from the obvious, those were my sort of my favorite in terms of like teams improving to compete, and then in the case of the Troy, like improving their developmental context, to put
Mm-hmm.
it in a word. Those were my favorite. What
That's
were yours?
that's a really good look. I'm gonna tell you what I like about the T.J. Warren and Rick Carlisle situation. First off, we know Nate Bjorken lost this team well before he had it, right? That he probably should have never been a coach, but you got a championship resume. You did coach the Raptors. They were fast, and I don't know if he just tried to use that same formula in Indy. He lost Warren a long ass time ago. I don't think Warren ever wanted to play for him at all, and I'm surprised Warren was there. But I think the reason why he's there now is because of Carlisle. Carlisle is not like he's not like a buddy coach. You know what I'm saying? It's not like he's going to be your BFF. That's not how Carlisle gets down. But to your point, we are going to see a talented team be coached very differently. And I think that will show up on the court. I think he's going to have certain systems that he'll be able to run. And McDermott, Warren, and DeMontis, man, I believe that these guys can all get it together. That young guy who kind of came alive at the end of the season, I can't think of his name right now, the young slender guy. I'm going to see what his jump is. Is it Sumner? I believe. I can't think of that guy's name.
Yeah, but he got hurt. He got hurt recently.
Yeah. I personally, the move that I like there is the coaching move. That because you have too much talent on that team to be as bad as they were. But that's when you have a team that, obviously doesn't want to play for the coach. I'm going to tell you, okay, we could talk about Malik Monk. We could talk about the Lakers and all that. We could talk about Kyle going to your love team, your favorite team, the Miami Heat. I'm going to tell you something I'm really surprised about, man, and that I think this team is going to do pretty well. I like what Chicago did. I like what Chicago did with picking up DeRozan, picking up Lonzo Ball, and picking up Caruso. You get rid of Temple, you get rid of Porter, you get rid of Satoransky. I believe they upgraded all their players, in my opinion. I was reading something that said Billy Donovan had the lowest percentage of assists in his last 5 teams that he's coached. Now, mind you, he's got KD, he's got James Harden and Russell Westbrook. It's not like these guys are going to be passing the ball a lot. But he's never been a coach with the team that has had a high percentage in assists. These guys are always on an island, right? I believe that he gives the reins to Lonzo Ball to do just that. Because when you talk about a person who is a great passer, who sees the floor at a high level, it is definitely Lonzo Ball. So I think you do have a revamped team, and hopefully you allow Lonzo to play the game he plays. And that is, he has gotten better at his shooting. He actually changed his shot up over time. You know, so I think you're going to see a better shooter in Lonzo Ball, but I think you're going to see great off-ball movement with DeMar DeRozan. I believe that. I believe you're going to see him have a high percentage of low difficulty shots because Lonzo's going to find him. So I do like what Chicago has done. Caruso is Caruso. He's an NBA champion, right? You got to give him that. So he's going to bring you some experience. Playing for LeBron, if you want to call it that, he is going to show you tricks of the trade to allow you to maximize your potential. And I do believe that Caruso is going to take some of that discipline and take it over to Chicago. So all in all, man, I honestly have to say, I like Indy's move with Carlisle back in. And I do like what Chicago has done altogether with bringing in those three key players. I would have to agree with Patty Mills. Maybe that's why there was maybe ruffles or talks about, Kyrie possibly being traded, because you do have another veteran that's come in that could probably play discipline, be a team player, if you want to call it that. Kyrie wasn't even showing up to games. You know what I'm saying? He was just, going off, if you will. So I do like what they've done. To be honest with you, they are a sad team, but I still like Washington bringing in Dinwiddie, Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, and Caldwell Pope. They're all Lakers. So you got the Lakers over there in Washington now. You had to do that to get Russell, but I do believe this team gets better. I believe you're going to see a better Kuzma, in my opinion. He's not going to be this. He's going to be more of an important player for the team versus just being this role player that, would just kind of be off and on. So all in all, I do like what Washington has done also. But my favorite offseason move, without a shadow of a doubt, besides my beloved Lakers, I love what Chicago has done. I'm just going to see if Billy Donovan can handle, what's going on. I'm sure that this will be the highest assist percentage team he has coached this year. I do believe that. So I'll leave it at that. Those are my favorite moves in the offseason. Before we get out of here, man, what are your expectations going into the new NBA season?
Man, I'm just excited. I'm honestly really excited to dive deeper into basketball. Last year was my first year diving deep and actually trying to watch at least all teams all year.
Yeah.
And it was a weird season to start because, COVID, it was weird.
Mm-hmm.
But this year as we talked about it at the top, we're looking to get into normalcy a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully things get better from here. And there's a lot of good teams out here. There's a lot of good teams. Brooklyn looks like the team to beat, but besides them, you have the Eastern Conference, everyone is pretty decent, and you could make an argument for everyone besides the bottom tier teams I mentioned, which is Cleveland, Orlando, and Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a case for everyone besides that to make the playoffs, make the play-in. There's a lot of, I mentioned earlier, 5 teams that could be the third or even second best team in the Eastern Conference, depending if something happens to Milwaukee or Brooklyn. And then in the West, the Lakers are good. They obviously have a lot of question marks surrounding them, but you still have Phoenix, you still have Utah, the Clippers. Even though we're not expecting them to be top 3, they can still be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Denver with Jokic can still be pretty good. There's a lot of good, very good teams in this league, so I'm just overall really excited. And obviously the young talent that's coming in looks really promising as well, with Zion, with Ja. Players in their second year, and then the rookies that came in, they look to be promising as well. So I'm just really excited for this to be a good competitive year. Hopefully less postponed games. Hopefully players, get vaccinated and they, behave responsibly on the road and that type of stuff. So we can avoid having any, bumps in the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word I was looking for. But I'm just excited. How about you?
My expectations really is I expect to see normal happen. This is something we also talked about last year, and that is the NBA probably won't be normal until after that season. We're here now, right? We are here now. We're normal as we're going to be unless something crazy happens. But we've got the vaccinations. We're gonna have fans again. So my expectation is the season to be normal. Just have the way the season's supposed to be drawn out. That's the way it's going to be. So my expectation is for the season to finally be normal again. Close us out with a prediction or hot take for this season.
Well, I got two.
Okay.
And it's funny because one of them I referenced them earlier, and then the second one is about a team you mentioned just now.
Okay.
So that's funny. My first hot take has to involve Chicago, and they're really good. Like they made a lot of moves to like get top heavy good. You know, you look at their best four players: Lonzo, Sack, DeMar, Vucevic. Not in that particular order. They're really good, but I have questions about their depth. I have questions about the other guys around them. So that leads me into my hot take being that I don't think Chicago is a top 4 seed in the East.
Wow.
And that's not to say they're not going to be good. Like obviously there's a 5 and a 6 seed, but I don't think they're top 4 because even with the top 4, I mean the top 4 of their team, not in the conference, like their big 4 to kind of difference the two. If you talk about their big 4, there's obviously questions about like the spacing and when DeMar doesn't have the ball, how does that look? Like, can Levine stay consistent with the outside shot? There's a whole lot of questions there. I'm not skeptical of their fit together, but I could see games where it just doesn't click. And then besides that, like the supporting cast, like every good top 4, top 3 team in whatever conference needs a good supporting cast. And when you look at this Bulls team, besides the top 4 guys, I only trust 3 players. I trust Caruso. You mentioned him. He's a champion, obviously. Pretty damn good. I kind of trust Patrick Williams. He was very inconsistent last year, but I trust that he can stay consistent.
Yeah.
But caveat here, he's hurt.
He's hurt.
Today it came out he suffered I think it was an Achilles strain or something in his leg. He's out for like 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8, if I read correctly. Something on those lines. Like he's out for a month or 2. And then Derek Jones Jr., who they acquired in the 3-way trade with Markkanen and Markkanen going to Cleveland, Larry Nance Jr. going to Portland, which was another great underrated move that I did honorable mention in the offseason moves thing. Besides them, I don't trust anyone else. I mean, Kobe White is okay, but what does he look like next to Caruso? Like being a scorer only, what does his role look like? I would like to think Troy Brown Jr. will be really good, but I haven't seen anything consistent from him. Besides that, I don't really trust anyone.
Interesting.
I don't really trust anyone. Like I think they'll be good off the base of like their top 4.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have the depth and necessary to be top 4 in the East. My other hot take is a much more positive one that I made reference to earlier in regards to the Spurs. And I think the Spurs will make a play-in push. And that might seem weird because, well, Kevin, the Spurs made the play-in last year. How could they not make the push? Well, they lost all of their veterans.
Yes, they did.
They lost Rudy Gay, DeRozan, they lost Aldridge. Well, Aldridge that was on the trade deadline. They lost Patty Mills. So, like, it's the youth movement. They signed Doug McDermott. They got Thaddeus Young in the sign and trade with Chicago for DeRozan, notably. So they got a mixture of young guys with a couple of veterans. It looks like a rebuilding team, but I think they can make a play and push. I'm betting on the young guys to take a leap, being Dejounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker, Derek White, maybe if he stays healthy and he's consistent. And I think the veterans will help enough to the point where I think they can make a solid play and push. And I wouldn't be surprised if they end up making the play in. So those would be my 2 hot takes.
I've got one that I keep going back and forth with, and it's really this, and it's very simple. They put PJ Washington at the 5. My hot take is that Charlotte will finish a higher seed than Boston. I do believe so. I believe
That's
so.
spicy.
They
That's
play.
spicy,
I
spicy.
think they had the highest ran pace team in the league, or in the East rather. Like, this team plays fast. You put PJ at the 5 now. You don't have Zeller there, right? Cody Zeller's gone. You put PJ Washington at the 5, man. And if he learns that position, just say the same goes for AD, playing AD and putting AD at the 5. If you put PJ at the 5, man, this team just could be very, very, very deadly. So my prediction is, if that happens, this team will finish at a higher seed than Boston. That's my biggest hot take. That's the only one I could come up with.
That's a spicy one. That's all you need, honestly. That's all you need to cover the hotness there, sir.
Yeah,
That wow.
man.
Now that's
Well,
spicy.
man, yeah, this is the introduction of the 2021-2022 season. I am Derl. That's your boy Kev. Next to me, we talked about the forecasting of the top tier and bottom tier teams on the East and West. We got into the biggest offseason moves in our opinion, as well as our expectations for this NBA season. And we capped it off with a really good hot take on both ends. Kev, this is the first of many again, sir. It was a good one, man. It was a good one today.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, you can keep checking us out
Mm-hmm.
every Friday, or maybe we take a couple off, but like almost every Friday,
Mm-hmm.
7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
and then whatever else Central Time, I don't know. But like, yeah, you can check us out. Come hang out, say hi. Let's talk about the NBA, like what happens in the week, what we expect for the weekend when the
Mm-hmm.
games actually tip off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a fun year last year. Hoping it's a fun one now.
Yeah,
Hope you all join us for the ride.
that's right. Kev, where can they find you, sir?
Y'all can find me on Twitter at InanoKev785. I am occasionally right on Substack, occasionally right on Medium. Some articles and like storytelling stuff on sports, and in a few I'll start posting on the Off the Ball Network,
Nice.
owned by our good friend Chris
Chris
LeBron, who
LeBron. Yeah.
joined there a couple of weeks ago, but as we talked about, like school has me effed up, so haven't had time to like sit down and produce something good. But
That's dope.
when I do, it'll be really good. But like, yeah, for now you can check me out on Twitter at Kev75, and everything I do, I'll tweet about it, and you'll find out. What about you, Daryl?
Man, you know where you could find me at It's Derl, ITSDERL on Twitter. I am there. We have got some huge news coming up, man. So, on one end, there's not much I can say because I'm kind of bound by it, but you will be seeing some huge things come down the pipeline. As far as this show, we're going to put our graphs up and everything on next week and be ready to go. So I know it's plain now, but I wanted to make sure I'd rather be more consistent than perfect, right? So we'll
Right.
be more interactive and have our graphs on next week. I'll be behind a better camera and so forth. So we're really going to put this in a high gear, man. I am ready for this to go down. I am ready for this to go down. As you know, I've been working on a model and that's complete. So we will be bringing in sports betting, which is going to be primarily in all NBA because I know that's where I'm good at. And just keeping it moving, man. That's how it gets down, bro. We just keep it moving one day at a time. And with that said, we are out, man. We will see you again on Friday, 7:30 Eastern. Be there or be square, or whatever you want to call it, man. Until then, peace out.
Hey, y'all.
Peace out.